We can't tell you how frustrating it was for us to upload our podcast when we first got started. The websites were clunky, we had data limits, and it was all so confusing. That is, until we found Zencastr. Zencastr is an online platform built for podcasters to not only upload their podcasts, track their listeners, connect their audience, and so much more. Zencastr plans have no upload or download limits, so your cost won't grow as you do. Embed their player that automatically updates to show the latest episode of your show. Zencastr lets you see your podcast downloads along with your traffic, website, and Google Analytics. Zencastr also supports multiple podcasts under one account. The best part is, if you already have a podcast on another platform, you can switch to Zencastr with a one-click importer, all free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/Zencastr to start saving time and money with your podcast today.
Hello and welcome to How to Make a Podcast. My name is John Bunn, and I am joined today, as always, by the co-host of this here podcast, Mr. Nick Miller. Nick Miller, what is good in your world, my friend?
Well, we are back home. I was in Colorado the last week visiting my parents out in Colorado Springs. I'm home. I'm good. I'm ready to, get the week started and have a good productive week. Got a lot of stuff to do for our wedding film business this week to get done. And anyway, looking forward to that. But I'm really excited to be here today on How to Make a Podcast. I enjoy recording these with you and sharing some stuff that we've learned and been a part of. And that's just what we're going to keep doing today.
Yeah, it's been really neat to watch as this community continues to grow. Mm-hmm. We just passed 2,500 downloads of the podcast, which is amazing. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. But yeah, just to see the energy and how many people are being helped and motivated already by this community. And that's what we're here for. We don't know it all. We're not like the ultimate professional podcasters. That's not what we're saying we're doing. We just started a podcast. It went nuts. We've made a lot of money doing it, and we just are trying to show you what we've done to do that. And so,
yes,
so many people out there have been motivated. And so then we started this podcast, How to Make a Podcast. And we did this podcast in such a way that, like, we wish we would have done it this way when we were starting our other podcast, How to Film Weddings. And so many people are talking about how to grow an audience, and we've already hit 2,500 downloads in our first month and a half. And so we just wanted to kind of open the door, move the curtain, whatever you want to call it, and show you what we did in order to help you more.
Yeah, definitely. And, whenever you hear the word 2,500, I'm sure some of you in a month and a half, some of you are thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so much. That's amazing. I wish I could have that. And there's probably some of you out there that are like, 2,500, like I got that in an hour. Like, what? So we're not, again, we learned a lot of stuff with our How to Film Weddings podcast, and we're implementing that with How to Make a Podcast. And, we're just sharing the results and sharing the quality. And John and I are very pleased and very happy with the growth of this podcast. And so we just want to, talk about that and how we got it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So some of you, we hope this is helpful to all of you, but we understand if some of you are like, that's really not that big of a deal. I've already got this, but hopefully you can pick up some nuggets and learn some stuff from the thing that we're talking about today. So how we got our first 2,500 downloads, that's kind of our topic. That's what we're talking about here today. And the first thing that we really did is we honed in on our niche. Or niche. Mm-hmm. Depends on who you are, how you like to say that. So we honed in on what that was. And there's kind of three different areas of this whenever you're looking at your niche, what you should focus in on and what you should figure out. And there's the three P's that you really need to focus in on, right? John, they are the what you are proficient at, meaning what you know about, what do people ask you about, what you're passionate about, stuff that you get excited about and get geeked out about. And the other one is it profitable? Is it possible to make money? And whenever you kind of wrap those things up in a niche, that's maybe where you should go and what you should do. So John, let's take a second and unpack all of those things.
Yeah, and I do want to say this because I think that, if you're out there and you're like, I want a podcast because it's a fun thing to do, it's a creative outlet, you're not in it to make money or anything like that. That is totally fine. And we want to be, a resource for you as well. But as we have defined our niche and continue to refine our niche, we are talking to you as a listener of somebody that wants to have a ton of fun podcasting, but also sees the ability to make money doing it. When we started How to Film Weddings, we are both very proficient in wedding filmmaking because we've been doing it for a long time. We're very passionate about it. We could talk about it all the time. Yeah. And we saw there was a potential for profit. And those kind of work, your passion first, and then you're proficient, and then the profit can come. And so, like, when you think about, what we're talking about, some people are just like, well, they're only in it for the money, and for us, we wanted to be like, the dream for us, and we hope it is for you too, is to get paid to do something like this that you love so much. I mean, for us to be able to make our income what it is now, I remember not being able to pay my bills, and now I can more than pay my bills. And it's largely due to the fact that we are making money podcasting. And so, if you're out there, you're like, oh, these guys, it's like all they talk about is money or whatever. That's not the truth. We are all about helping you grow your podcast, to help you be passionate and have proficiency. And if it is something you want to be profitable in, that's great. But, when we figured out our niche, Nick, the next thing that we did was we really figured out like our pillars, our categories, the things that all point towards, our niche of making a profitable podcast. I mean, that's the How to Make a Podcast niche. We're out there trying to show people how to make this podcasting thing into a business, how to make it fun while making it into a business, showing people little tips and tricks along the way. And so there are pillars to that. There are things that we set up, gear talk, yes, but growing an audience is, your business side of it, your editing side of it. There's all these different pillars that work with the niche.
Yeah, and let me break that down a little bit more if you're kind of confused about what we're talking about. So we figured out our niche, and what your niche is, again, the thing that you're proficient about, passionate about, and profitable. You focus that down, and then you go to your pillars. And let's say, okay, I'm going to take How to Film Weddings for example. Okay, so How to Film Weddings, our niche was going to be wedding filmmakers, which is a pretty narrow niche considering how many wedding filmmakers there are. There's thousands of us, but it's not something like in the even hundreds of thousands or millions of people. Okay, so it's narrowed down, and then our pillars, and these are subjects, these are topics that we can always come back to that fit within our niche. So for How to Film Weddings, we had business, editing, and shooting. Okay, the business of wedding filmmaking, editing your videos, and then shooting your videos, and everything that we have done funnels into those three pillars. And with How to Make a Podcast, we're like, our niche is podcasters that want to make money. So now our pillars are things like, growing your audience, how to do advertising, those kind of things, and everything that we do fits into those pillars, so that you're always know what it is that you're going to talk about, and it will always fit within your niche of your podcast. Because one of the worst things that you can do with a podcast, whenever you figure out your niche, is do something way outside of it. So then the current listeners that you have might not care what you have to say. And then maybe if new listeners find you because of this, side idea, then they're not going to care about the other stuff that you have. And if you have sponsors that are paying you for a pure audience, and then you start getting these people that are unpure, then they're not going to be happy. So that's what the pillars are, focusing everything into that specific niche that you have.
And you're not necessarily, the episode today, how we got our first 2,500 downloads. The reason we're talking about this is because we know we wouldn't be there already without having figured a few of these things out. But I do want to encourage you that this isn't something that you just have a revelation and boom, everything you're always going to talk about. This is a process. This takes time. As we've done more podcasts, more people in our group are like, hey, we want to talk about these things more. We want this is something that we want to learn from you. This is how, that we enjoy listening to you guys talk about these things. And so you can always be, like with our How to Film Weddings podcast, we mainly talk about business because that is the main stuff that people find, that they're interested in, that they have, there's not anybody else really talking about it in the way that we talk about it. It's helpful for them. So, we set those up. So that was the first thing we did. After we set up our niche, our pillars, kind of decided How to Make a Podcast is going to go in this direction. We didn't want to try to appeal to everybody of all sort that wants to do any kind of podcast, but we knew that we wanted to appeal to people that could see themselves making a living podcasting or generating extra income podcasting, and we wanted to show them the secrets to the success that we've had. After that, Nick and I decided, okay, we're doing this thing. We're going to talk podcasting. This is our like who we are. Now let's create a look, a brand, a feel, a vibe around that. And so we started laying out these kind of keywords, like what do we want people to think of when they think of us? Like we don't want people to think that we know it all, because we don't. We might just be a few steps ahead of where you are. We want it to be fun and interactive, and not this, we're up here in our tower and you have to do this finite way or you're not going to ever find success in your business. And so we started laying out all these kind of things about who our ideal listener is and what type of things they would be, attracted to. And Nick, you're the one that kind of built out the look and the feel for How to Make a Podcast. So what kinds of things did you look at whenever, you built our current logo, the look and feel for the podcast blueprint course that we have? Like, you're the one that did all of that. With my, you showed me things I would look, but like, what was going through your mind whenever you were creating that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So with the How to Make a Podcast logo, it's actually very intentional. You might be looking at it, but if Blake, why don't you throw that on the screen really quick right here, just so that people can see it if they're watching it. But you can see the how is at the very top, to make is in the middle, and then a podcast is lower, and you can kind of tell there's like this stair step effect. You're kind of stepping up is kind of the idea that I had. And as we were talking about this, we wanted to make How to Make a Podcast as kind of a, we're taking you on a journey. We're taking you up, the stairs. We're taking you up the mountain. Okay. And that was the idea behind the How to Make a Podcast logo, is a stair step effect. If you see our visuals, how everything is like coming out at you, coming towards the screen with our logos and our names and all that stuff. Again, very intentional, growing, learning, becoming, and these are the kind of things that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to design or comes to logos, is that everything should be intentional. My wife actually went to school to be a graphic designer, and her, the one thing that she learned was, because it looks cool is not a good enough answer. Okay. And there's lots of people out there that have lots of logos that look cool. A lot of them look really bad, but the ones that look cool, they say, oh, I just thought it looked cool to do this. But whenever you have that reason why you want to do this, why, then that can really help elevate your brand. And again, most people that are watching this, if they've seen our logo, like, they're not seeing the step by step, they're not like getting it, but we know that as we've like niched down, as we made these pillars, as we have our purpose in our design and our brand and all of that kind of stuff, that that really mattered to us. And then whenever we had our podcast blueprint course, sorry, you have something.
No, you're good. Good.
Okay.
Well, yeah. And then actually, hold up on the podcast blueprint and talk about.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that the thing that I think most people don't feel here, like that they don't do, is just the word intention. We were very intentional with the niche, with our pillars, and then with the look and feel of how we did things. Whether or not it set a precedence with us where we're like, we want to help people take steps. We're not trying to to make them take leaps. We're not trying to, we want them to grow. We want them to feel like, and so that just kind of pulses through the veins of our company and our podcast, is like, that's our heart. And there are people that won't get that, and that's fine. But the intentionality behind it sets me and Nick up to kind of always know when we go away, like we can always come back to that intention. And so that's why.
And
that
another
was so
thing,
important.
even with the colors, we have like this maroon, but we have these blues and this gray. Like we pick those. They're a little bit more muted because we want it to be kind of an approachable feel. If we had something like super bold, like really dark red and black, or just something that was very dominant. Okay, I just felt that wasn't as approachable. And so, everything all 100% works together. The music that we picked, for our intro music and stuff, it's fun and it's upbeat and it like gets you excited to, hear what we're going to talk about. Blake, if you want to play a little bit, right here, just. Okay, so
Poor Blake.
So anyway, that's something with that, and then with our podcast blueprint. Okay, blueprint obviously was a thing that we were honing in on. So our color scheme, if you couldn't guess, is going to be blue and white, very, like, okay, I have this blueprint, but we also had kind of waveforms in the logo to say, okay, it's a podcast blueprint, but you're going to learn, podcasting, and it all has come together with our, we made some animations and that kind of stuff for the actual podcast blueprint course. And it's very, sketched on, like a blueprint, and then it kind of morphs into the logo. All of our transitions and that kind of stuff are very sketchy, blueprinty, kind of thing. It was all very intentional in the things that we did, because we wanted to have this look and this feel communicated throughout. I think a problem that some people have is they start and they get really excited and they do all this stuff. You have the intro music and you have the logos and you have the designs and you have all that stuff, but then like down the way, people forget doing that. Or you have the opposite, where they just get started, they haven't done the forethought, to do all of this stuff, and then they add it. And I mean, podcasting is a learning thing. So that's not bad if you don't have it and then you add it later, but we just know that we wanted to set ourselves up for success. And so we wanted to have all this groundwork laid before we got really going so that we could have this solid foundation moving forward. John, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think when just looking, back to the topic of this, podcast today, how we got our first 2,500 downloads, I think that people would tune in and say, well, what, you guys aren't even talking about that yet. And honestly, we wouldn't be there if it hadn't been for picking the right niche, using what we're proficient in, what we're passionate about, what could be profitable. We had our pillars. We wanted to talk about growing your business and how to interview guests and how to do, and like all these different things. And then building that feel after figuring out who it is that we were. And then at that point, it all flowed together to where we could make more of an impact, and it felt more like a real show, and it felt more attractive, and it like you click over and you're like, oh, there's this Facebook group. Oh, the Facebook banner even looks, everything all flows and works together. And so that all played a part in this 2,500 downloads in our first 7 episodes or whatever it is at this point. But, another thing, and we would definitely want to chat more about this, it's like you can have the perfect sounding podcast and the nicest equipment, the best lighting for video, but if nobody tunes in, like, you're wasting your time. And you're like, a lot of people have way better sounding podcasts than us, or way better, lit, or way better whatever, but nobody's tuning in, and that's because they haven't built their audience. And so we're going to talk about that after this break. If you have a pulse, you probably hate the subject of taxes and running the bookkeeping portion of your business. But like it or not, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you are going to have to pay attention to your numbers. But don't worry, we have the answer for you: Core Financial. Our friends over at Core Financial have taken the pressure off of us so we can focus on what we love doing most: running our podcast. They take care of all of our taxes, monthly bookkeeping, financial plans, and make sure we take full advantage of all of the tax benefits we qualify for. It just feels good knowing we aren't going to get a big surprise during tax season. If you are serious about building a business with your podcast, head on over to howtomakeapodcast.co/core to see what they can do for you.
So you've got everything you need for your podcast. You've recorded your audio and video. You're so excited, but wait, You don't know how to master the audio or edit the video of your podcast. We know someone who can help. The podcast editors. Picture this. You record both audio and video for your podcast. You upload it to your remote editor, and a few days later, your podcast is ready for you to upload and push to the world. What will you do with your extra time? Connect with sponsors? Grow your Facebook group? Start that project or even course you have dreamed of for months? The possibilities are endless. We are blown away by the podcast editors and love working with them and using their services. They can edit audio, video, or both for your podcast. Don't get stuck trying to do this on your own. Get in touch with the podcast editors today. If you'd like to save 50% off of your first project, head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/thepodcasteditors.
And we are back from break. I want to start this segment with the question of the day presented by Zencast. Nick, this is the question for you. Everything is set up. How do I grow my audience?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and this is exactly what John and I did. So we had our niche picked out. We knew the things we wanted to talk about. We had all our branding and everything ready to go, and we started with list building. And what do I mean by list? I mean an email list, of getting people onto our email list so that whenever we had new podcasts come out or we had products come out or anything like that, we could email them and let them know about this thing. This is something that we did not do with How to Film Weddings, and we learned way later in the process. I mean, I think we were doing our How to Film Weddings podcast. It was probably for 13 months or so, really, before we started with the serious list building and trying to get more people to listen. And so that has been huge with us. They say, if you're selling, digital products and that sort of stuff, that each email on your list equals about $1 a month. Okay. And so just thinking about that, and we're like, okay. And we knew we wanted to launch, and we knew that we wanted, people on our list and to listen to us. So we started building this email list even before, we had launched anything. Think about it when it comes to television shows or movies or albums, that have a lot of hype around them. They're talking about them, and you're seeing previews and you're seeing stuff for months before they actually release. Why is that? So that they can build hype, so that they can get people excited about it. And so to build our list, we had a freebie PDF download that we ran some Facebook ads, and so people could see that. They could download that free PDF in exchange for giving us their email address. And whenever you're giving somebody something of value, they will happily hand over their email address. And so before we launched our very first episode, we had around 2,000 or so emails on our email list, so that whenever we had that batch of first episodes to go, we could send it to all these people and say, hey, here you go, our podcast is live, are you ready, are you excited, that sort of thing. So anyway, what do you have to add?
Yeah, well, if we look back at the first half of this podcast, because we had set all these things in motion, we knew what kind of list we wanted to build. And so, you have to step by step do these things where, creating this ad, this freebie, and some of you might say, well, I don't have money for this or whatever. You can go in a route where you're not paying for this. You can share a freebie inside of podcaster groups, or you can share it with other people, or try to, connect with other influencers in your field, or, there's ways you can go about, just growing it organically. And if you do have even as little as $4 or $5 a day, $1 a day, you can start growing your list. And you said something, and I want to repeat it. So if it kind of flew by, on average, if you have an email list, it is worth $1 a month to your business in perpetuity for each person that's on the list. So if you had 100 people on your list, on average, you're going to make $100 a month from that list if you work that list correctly. And so that's really important to us. And there's a couple of ways we did that. And one of the main ways, besides this Facebook ad, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but we started a Facebook group as well. And most of you that are listening are in the group, but the ad itself was very strategic, and it showed my face or Nick's face, and it basically asked a question, or it said something with a question mark on it, is, we made $15,000 a month podcasting. Like what? And we knew that people would troll us. We knew that there would be people that like whatever.
And boy, have they.
And they have, and it's fun and also very frustrating, but neither here nor there. But, those guys are just a scam and that's fine. But we knew that the people that saw that and saw the logo, the branding, our faces, saw the copy that we wrote with the ad would be like, I want to click that and see. And then it begins this journey with people to where they clicked that ad. Some of them did. A lot of people didn't, but, thousands did. And that's okay that the majority didn't click the ad because we're trying to funnel out people that are not in our ideal audience. And so if you clicked that ad, if you're listening to this because of that ad, the ad is actually there to serve you. Like we wanted to get in front of you so we could then serve you. And so what happened is you click that ad and you download a free PDF that's 5 ways that we have monetized our podcast and how we are making now over $20,000 a month podcasting. And, that might be off-putting to some people, and we try our best to like really hedge against that so people know we're not just all about the money. We're, the money allows us to have impact. But the point of all of this is to say, like, we were able to build this list based on people that are interested in making money podcasting, which is part of who we are. We wanted to show them steps. And after that ad was served to certain people and they clicked it, they are on our list, but they also were given another opportunity to go further with us, which is there was a big red button that said, we have a Facebook group, join our Facebook group. And so every day, more and more people were joining our Facebook group because of this ad and because organically they start finding people, or Facebook starts showing it to people that are in a similar interest. And so one of the things in our Facebook ad or Facebook group, Nick, is that you can ask questions whenever people are joining the group. Why don't you talk about the questions we ask and how that helped?
Yeah. So we, with our How to Film Weddings group, our podcast, we started a group a few months in whenever we started seeing a real value that we could bring or we could offer with that community. And so we started one very early with How to Make a Podcast, started a group. And one of the things that Facebook allows you to do is ask, questions for people to get into the group. So one of the questions that we ask, we say, how long have you been podcasting? What is your podcast about? But then we say, would you like to join our email list? Okay. And if they don't want, that's not a like they don't have to if they don't want to, but if they want to share their email address, then now we can copy that email address, put it into our list. And there are some people that are joining our group because they saw the ad, but there are other people organically that are seeing it. And so if they organically see it and they put their email, then now we are getting an email address for free, but we're not making it a requirement for them to join. Okay.
And so the way that we even write it, the question about email address is like, do you want to? If not, just say nah. It's not like this. Exactly. You have to give us.
Right. Giving people a way out if they don't want to. And we're actually, our percentages of people giving email addresses are actually higher in How to Make a Podcast than they are in How to Film Weddings, for whatever reason that might be. But so we're getting, of 10 people that are joining, we're probably getting 6 to 7 email addresses from the organic, finding that kind of stuff. So that's another way we've been able to build our email list is that way. And those aren't costing us anything. When it comes to cost, John, I think it's people should know how much we've spent. And again, we are in a different position than a lot of podcasters out there. Well, we have another successful podcast. We are making money. So we actually do have some marketing money to put into it. And with running this free PDF download over the last, as of recording this, maybe 2.5 months or so, we have spent around $1,500 or so, would you, about $1,500 just on that free PDF download. What do you have to add to that?
Yeah, we had Kerry Egler on when we were doing the podcast, Perfect Podcast Challenge, and he actually has a mini course available inside the podcast blueprint to the people that purchased it on the first round, which is all about building magnets, lead magnets for your podcast. And so we hired him to help us set this up. I knew a little bit about Facebook ads, but we set it up to audiences, to show up to audiences of people that we felt like were similar into people we would want. And because we knew the niche and all this kind of stuff, we were able to set up audiences. One of the audiences that we were able to really focus in on, and Facebook allows you to do this, is you can say, I want to show up to people that like certain pages and also filter them out by additional things that they like. So we set up ads, for instance, for people that like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, entrepreneurial guy, but we also set up the ad to show up to people that liked him plus have shown interest in podcasting, plus have shown interest in entrepreneurship. And so you can really filter that down. And so we built out these strategic lists and then started looking and saying, this one's performing better than the others. And we set up basically 3 audiences similar to that one with different entrepreneurs, and started running these ads and saying, okay, we're going to spend, we started out with like $20 a day on like 3 or 4 different ads. And then as it started getting successful, we scaled that up to where we were spending at one point $50 or $60 a day, which is a lot, but not at the same time, because we knew the value of getting people on our list. And so we built those, in exchange for, like, we gave away something free. But the thing that really sets us apart is that, like, once you join the group, it's not like that's the end. Our goal is to create a hub for communication around the subject of podcasting. And you can do this around the subject in your podcast too. But the Facebook group is kind of the hub for everything for us. We're in there a lot, and we're doing daily threads and learning what your podcast is and helping you connect with others and showing off that we're real guys and we're not just trying to, like, make money and run or anything like that, and showing you over time and building that relationship with you that you are going to grow as a podcaster. And some people are like, those guys are, scam artists and whatever, I'm out of here. And some people are like, oh my goodness, John and Nick are awesome and we love you guys. And there's so many more of that. And so that building that happened, Nick, before we ever even announced our podcast launch date. We had this niche we figured out. We had these pillars. We built the brand. We started running ads. We started building a list. We started working through and building our Facebook community. And then, Nick, we said, hey guys, guess what? We have a podcast coming. And so it built all this momentum. If we would have just said, here's our podcast with nobody listening, we would have had 10 or 15 downloads, but there wasn't the momentum. And sometimes that momentum is what carries you through and keeps you excited to push through in your podcast.
Yeah. So we were building this list. We had about 2,000 names on it. And then a week and a half or so before we were going to launch our podcast, we recorded a little teaser, saying, hey, guess what? This is coming. And so whenever we, about a week and a half before we launched our first few episodes of the podcast, we sent that out. We got... from a sponsor standpoint, before we even had our first episode, we had like 250 downloads of our podcast because we had this teaser, that was out there in the world that people could listen to and, get kind of hyped up for us. And then on launch day, we recorded 4 episodes of things we knew that people would really want to listen to hear about. We talked about, we introduced ourselves, but we talked about, how we made $250,000 in our first, 18 months of podcasting. And so we had those 2 and then a couple other episodes kind of about monetization and stuff, which we knew people would be really interested in. And we titled them in a way that was interesting. Okay. Make the title of something, you kind of want to say the word clickbait. Just, clickbait titles are very like catchy and jump out at you and have you a response, but we don't want them to like be false, right?
Yeah,
you want them to be clickable,
title, yeah.
Right? You want them to be clickable. You want them to be excitable. And so we launched with 4 episodes so that people could binge. Okay, people like to binge. They like to listen. And I think a lot of people, they lose momentum because they have one episode and then they have to wait another week for a second one. So we dropped with 4, and we had in that first with the teaser and then, with those 4, in that first week and a half, we had close to 1,000 downloads, like almost instantly, because of all of that. And now we're really starting to build that momentum, to get us to that next level.
Yeah. And so what happened too, Nick kind of touched on it. We were able to get a few sponsors, and they're still there because of the credibility that we offered from our previous podcast, as well as already saying, we've already got this many names on our email list. We already have this many podcasters like that kind of like on an email list, and so people were willing to jump on that. And so that's super, super great. And what happened, and we're going to get into this in our next episode a little bit more, because this conversation really is just kind of getting going, but like is getting up and getting ready for the build up for the launch. And then what we've done since launching to continue with that momentum, because you might be out there and you might have already started your podcast and you're like, well, what do I do? How do I go from, and so there's a lot of different strategies that we can show you to say, hey, let's continue to build and get people on your list and get it and work this new plan and start, you don't have to like start over or anything like that. And so, but you look at it, we launched with those 4 episodes, and we were able to then post it in the Facebook group that has thousands of people. We were able to watch a live watch party inside of the group. We were able to email it to our list at that point, had 2,000 people on it. We were able to, build that conversation. And so as that happened, and as then we got sponsored and have more money coming in, we're able to allocate a little bit more of that towards advertising, and it starts to snowball. And so the whole time that we're earning new, followers and listeners and earning emails for free and earning your trust and you can also be buying, and paying for these ads and generating, and they all work together. And if once they get to your podcast, once you all get to our podcast, if you feel like we suck, you're not going to stay around. And if you feel like the group sucks, you're not going to stay around. And we've seen hundreds and hundreds of new people every single week, joining our Facebook group, lots of reviews. And so the momentum is there, but we're constantly listening. The reason we're doing this episode is because I posted in the group, what do you want to hear about most? And the number one thing people said is how to grow my podcast. And so instead of titling this, how to grow your podcast, we have a title, how we got our first 2,500 downloads, because we hope that is clickbaity enough to get you to click and to learn this. And so it continues that conversation. So,
Yeah, definitely. It's great. And we do definitely have more that we want to share about this topic, but you're going to have to wait until next week's episode of the podcast before we will cover that. If you haven't yet, we want you to head over to podcastblueprint.co. There you can grab our course, the Podcast Blueprint, where you can learn all of this information and so much more. It's over 90 sections of information about how to grow and monetize your podcast and all that. We want you to head over there, check that out. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the How to Make a Podcast. And until next time, we will see ya.
We'll see ya.